Today I'm joined by Craig Simpson. Craig is two-time Stanley Cup champion and Wikipedia says the greatest sniper in NHL history. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Craig, I saw the clip from the Battle of Blades with your wife, Jamie.
Yep.
The skating skills we could see there, is that something that comes natural to an ice hockey player, or did you train for that?
Well, I would say the figure skating was a completely different realm for us from being hockey players. So it's something that, for me, that was happening 13 years after I retired. So I had back trouble, hadn't skated much. So getting back on the ice and having to learn and skate the way figure skaters did was a huge challenge. But honestly, I wish I had used it in my hockey playing days, because their power, their control, their edges, and the way that they skate would have helped me a lot. And as you can see now, so many figure skaters are NHL skating coaches. Jamie's partner and ex-husband David Pelche is the Edmonton Oilers here in Edmonton. He's their skating coach. So I definitely would have done it if I could go backwards and use some of the strengths and the techniques. I think it would have really helped me as a player.
That's interesting. What do they actually bring to the table? Is it more the skill side of skating?
Yes, and more the edge control and the power and the stride and the focus of the core of your body. If you think of the figure skaters, when they can execute so much and keep their body very still and use their lower body for real power and edge work and turn corners, and to be able to lift yourself and spin like they do in a jump, you can just imagine that the control that takes. And I think what you're finding for skaters in hockey now is that really does help their way of increasing your power, increasing your ability to turn tightly. And I just think it does translate well. It's a completely different sport and discipline. But I think to the skating stride, a lot of the NHL teams anyways are finding that it's helped guys increase their power, increase their speed, increase their explosiveness, and that's something that's really been used very effectively.
Yeah, I can imagine that. In your life as an athlete, what was your darkest moment?
Well, I was contemplating, the answer to that question. There are different moments that sort of stand out for different things. I would say at the very end, just to give you a little background, I had a career-ending back injury that ended my career at 28 years old, in the prime of my career. And so I would say, from a darkness standpoint and oh my gosh, what's next? I can remember a moment at the end of my last season when I had been struggling with the pain of every day. My life was just chronic pain 24/7. I was at Disney World in Florida with my son Dylan, who was just about not even 2 years old yet, with him on my shoulders waiting for one of the rides to open. And I just remember how much pain I was in and feeling, I can't do this anymore. I can't be dad. I can't hold my kids. I can't act away from the rink. And from an emotional standpoint, that was probably the lowest of my hockey career is over. My life is in pain. And I think that, that sort of puts you to an area when you've been used to competing and having the drive of waking up every day to try to get better and improve on your skills. That had no bearing on my life. It was like, oh my gosh, I got to get through the day and be a dad and be a father and be able to sit and, walk without pain. And so that was probably the darkest and something that, here 25 years, 27 years later, I still have chronic pain and still deal with the remnants of that. But from an athletic standpoint, I would say I was the second overall pick in the NHL draft in '85, which was a year after Mario Lemieux, who, ended up being one of our game's greatest players. And my first year in the NHL was one with great expectations, and I didn't meet them. And especially going to a team where Mario the year before, as the first overall pick, won the Rookie of the Year. He had 100 points. He was a dynamic player. And it was really the first time in my career that I failed. I didn't have a great rookie season. I had 11 goals, 28 points. It was a disappointment. So darkness-wise, I think it was the first time that you really had to look at yourself and say you didn't perform to the level you needed to be. And I remember many a nights coming back from the rink, frustrated and down and disappointed. And I would say it was probably the best learning moment for me, though. Instead of being down and, letting it derail me, it inspired me, and it sort of taught me what I needed to know about myself to get better and to train at a higher level and to be prepared to make that jump from university college hockey to the NHL. So there were moments in that year where I thought, man, this isn't going to work. And, I'm a failure. I'm not going to make it. And I think that was probably the first real time that you had to dig in and say, I can do this and I can turn this around. And, less than 2 years later, I had my best year and had 56 goals. And I just think that those are those moments that you have to decide, is it worth it? The answer was yes. And what do I really have to look at myself and say, it's not always somebody else's fault. The onus was on me to make sure that I trained and I did things differently to find that way to get success.
And what made you decide to say, yes, I want to do it? Imagine you would have to give that advice to a young athlete. They're probably at the same.
Yeah. I think you gotta have a passion for what you want to do. And my dream was to be an NHL player and to go so high in the draft and have great expectations was exciting, but it also comes with a responsibility, and that responsibility is to put in the work to try to achieve that level. So I think the decision was an easy one, but it was one that takes a lot of self-evaluation and say, there were some times where maybe I didn't get the opportunity or the coach didn't give me a chance, but in the end, the onus was on me. I've always said to other parents with young kids in hockey, and they trying to push their kids and give them every opportunity and give them, the best of this and that. I said, it's up to your child to decide what his development or her development is going to be. It's up to the child and the athlete that says, what do I want to be? What's important to me? And it was too important to me. It meant too much to me. I had sacrificed, at that point I was 19 years old and had played since I was about 5 years old. And I just said, this is far too important and I've got to find a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm. And when I did my research and I read that you had to end your career at a fairly young age,
yes,
I was thinking there was a story of a tennis player. Her name was Monica Seles.
Yep.
She was at the height of her career and then she was stepped down by someone.
Yes.
And later she said in an interview, she still has these what ifs, right? So if it would not have happened, do you have what ifs?
I think inherently, as an athlete and a dreamer and a performer and a drive to be the best you can be. And our goal was to win a Stanley Cup and to be a part of that. I do have the what ifs, financially, there's no question. When I was the second leading scorer in the league, scored 56 goals, I was making $175,000. And, today's player at that level is making, $5, $6, $7, $8 million. So I think the what ifs sometimes go, well, what if you played at a different era or a different time, or if you had an opportunity to play another 10 years. I think what was easier for me was the moment I talked about earlier where I had my son on my shoulders and I couldn't even stand and had to disappoint him by getting him down.
Mm.
I knew that my body was telling me I couldn't perform at this level. And having the ability to deal with that is a hard one at 28 years old. But my last 3 years in the NHL were, in so much pain and battling through injury that I think I remember in my training sessions the last year I played, when I was struggling to get, even ready for training camp because my back was still giving me troubles, where I went in and got a couple of medical procedures done. I remember thinking consciously that I got to go and give 100% of what I do. I've got to try as hard as I can. I got to train as hard as I can. I got to see every medical thing, because I don't want to be the 52-year-old now saying, well, you know what, I really didn't try and I didn't work hard at it and I should have, and maybe I could have played more. So I think it's something that you have to deal with, emotionally at the time, and say, if you cut corners and you didn't rehab or you didn't train hard enough and then all of a sudden you weren't able to play anymore, I think that's the hardest part, to sit here as an older, the time has passed you by, you'll never get it back. And there's your biggest what if. I was very conscious of that in the last 2 years of my hockey career with my struggles, to say, I've got to make sure that I'm honest with myself, that I tried everything and I worked as hard as I could and it just wasn't there. So the fact that I got traded and lived, the dream of winning 2 Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers and playing on such great teams, I think made it easier to handle the end of my career so young. But it's definitely something that I thought about at the time while I was going through the training.
I believe that. What was your best moment?
I was thinking of that, and I said, ironically, I don't think it's an individual moment. 50th goal in the NHL is a big milestone. So to get that was a great moment, and enjoyed it. But winning the Stanley Cup the first time was a great moment, and something that still stands out as something special. But I really feel the moment that, if I was to paint a picture of what the journey of being an athlete is, I remember sitting in the Boston Garden after we won the Stanley Cup in 1990, after Wayne Gretzky had been traded and nobody thought we were as good a team. And Mark Messier was our captain and he was my center. Glenn Anderson was my line mate. I played the best hockey of my life. I led the playoffs in scoring that year, scored the game-winning goal to clinch the Stanley Cup final that night. And I think the moment that really fills me up as an athlete was sitting in the dressing room in my sweaty underwear with my teammates with the Stanley Cup sitting there on the floor. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember the smell. I can remember the champagne, smell going around there. But I took inventory of that moment, said, this is what it feels like. It's like the Vince Lombardi quote about being exhausted on the field of battle and being victorious. And it gives me chills in my hair and my arms just thinking about it. That moment, I remember thinking, I want to remember how this moment feels, because that's the best moment you could ever have. You're playing your best hockey, you're with your best teammates, and you just won. And so I think it's not a game or a goal or something. It's that moment.
I'm getting goosebumps here at this end of the
I just noticed it too. It's a good feeling to relive.
It's really cool, I think. Yeah, really cool. If you could travel back in time, what advice would you give a younger you?
Don't waste a day on things that are important. Like to be cut short of my career. Basically I played 10 years in NHL, but my last 3 were a living hell, from pain standpoint. But if I look back on it, it was gone like that. And I think far too often younger me or younger guys complain about, the travel, or complain about all the practices, or complain about the work. And until you're not able to do it anymore, you don't realize how valuable it is. And, I tell the 15-year-old Craig Simpson, you put the work in every day. It's honestly worth it. Don't take anything for granted, and make sure that you take advantage of every opportunity that's given to you.
Cool. You have an older brother who was also an ice hockey player.
Yep.
And when you were young, aspiring ice hockey players, were it more a rivalry, or did you support each other?
Oh, it's like any good, healthy sibling rivalry. It's a rivalry that is helpful to both, and I was probably the best recipient of that help because I was 5 years younger. So you can imagine 5 years younger looking up to older brother and trying to emulate the things that he did. He was a wonderful player, Canadian Junior Hockey Player of the Year. And he was always, to me, a testing point. Like he played Junior B hockey when he was 15 years old. I played Junior B hockey when I was 14 years old. Like he let the sort of, here's where the bar is, and now go out and try to get there. I think that he was always there as a great role model for me, because he was a good person. He cared about scholastics. He was a smart guy, got his university degree while playing junior. So he was a good role model of being an athlete and a student at the same time. And he performed at a hugely high level. So from the time that, when I was, say, 6 or 7 and his buddies were 11, 12, I had to play goal because that's the only guy, the young guy was the only guy who got stuck in goal. It made me tougher because I took slap shots to the arm and to the face, but it's the young guy wanting to play with the older kids. And I think that forces you to be better. And throughout my life, I think that had a huge impact on me getting to where I was.
And I also read that he decided to not go all in on hockey because he wanted to focus on education.
Yeah, so
what made you then say, I go all in?
Well, you know what? I think he was realistic of the opportunities that presented themselves. And, he was in a little bit of a tough spot where he got drafted at a time where the draft went from 20 years old down to 18. So he got drafted with a lot of older guys. So he went maybe lower in the draft than he would have. He got drafted to the New York Islanders, who won 4 Stanley Cups in a row during that time. And I just think at the age of about 24 or 5, he had to make a call and a decision of, is my hockey life going to involve the NHL? And to that point, it hadn't. It had been the minor leagues. And if it wasn't, it's time to get on with my life. So I think I always felt very comfortable with that decision for him. My first training camp, when I was, again, 2nd overall pick, he was there trying out for our team as well, which was hard on me because I actually cared more about, him getting an opportunity to make it than myself. But I think it was the right choice for him. And for me, I got the opportunity to play, my very first year in the league, and I got to get some traction and find some success. So I think from that point, we traveled 2 different ways, but that's part of the reason I went and finished school early and went to Michigan State University as a 16-year-old to make sure that while I was trying to become an NHL player, my school was an important part of our life for sure.
What are the habits that make you a successful person or athlete?
I personally think it's never settling for anything but trying to do the best. Like I think I've lived my entire life of, whether we're playing a card game or checkers in the basement, you want to win and you want to find a way to be as good as you can at it. I think great performers are ones that, don't settle for just the ordinary. If you're struggling to get to a different level, like we talked about before, when you reach that new hurdle that says, oh my gosh, okay, I can't do this easily now. How am I going to find a way to get better? I think I've always been a perfectionist. Now that can be good and that can be bad in your parts of your life too. And my wife would probably say there's times where it's bad in your personal life, but I just think that find the things that you need to do to improve and continually grow and get better. I think that's really at the heart. Like I said before, I've always felt I'm in control of my own development. And so you have to be focused on, taking the steps to try to make sure if you don't know something, who does and where can you find it? If you haven't perfected something, you got to work on it every day and try to get better at it. And I think I've always had that mentality that you want to try to be the best you can be.
And you were assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, and you got the team, including you, got to the Stanley Cup final. Did you never consider going full-time into a head coach, or did you never wanted to pursue a head coach role?
I did, and again, with timing of life and family and children and changes in our family, I definitely had a desire. I think that the two players specifically who, while they were teammates, we talked about joining as coaches and general manager, Craig McTavish and Kevin Lowe, who are 8 and 9 years older than I am. So when we were talking about that, the idea was that they would retire and go into that, and then I'd have a longer career and go. I ended up having to retire before both of them. So I think the fact that I was 28 when I retired sort of stopped me from immediately going into it. But the time I spent into it was thrilling. It's the closest thing I've ever been able to get back to being an athlete again, to have every single day where there's something to work on. Like, there's never a dull moment. There's never a restful day. There's always something to push. You have to, find a way to communicate and correlate your thoughts into helping a player, and which I really loved. So, yeah, I did have thoughts. Part of the situation in Edmonton, I felt that if Craig McTavish was going to leave as the coach, I probably wouldn't get that job as an ex-Oiler again. It's just the situation that had been there for a number of years. And from a family-wise, I didn't want to go to the American League and be a head coach and move to another spot. So if you were saying, is there any regrets, or is there a little bit of me in the back of my head? I wish I had an opportunity at some point to have been a head coach in the NHL, but I loved the experience and going to the Stanley Cup final. When you asked earlier about the darkest moments, the darkest hockey moment for me, experience-wise, was losing Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final in Carolina. And, from a coach's perspective, you just can't understate what it means for the players who have worked so hard. One team is celebrating 16 wins. The other team got 15 in the playoffs. You've been working so hard, and that was probably the most difficult for me, to think of the players and the efforts that they had to get there. So coaching's definitely something that filled my bucket and really got me back to thinking from a player's perspective.
Do you have a morning routine, or did you have a specific morning routine as an athlete?
Yeah, I think as an athlete, what amazes me, I was thinking back, is how much you think about your body and your energy and how you feel. Like if we were doing this today and tomorrow was a game day, your sole thoughts is about your body and your preparation of where you're at. And I'd be thinking in the morning, do I have to get to the rink early? Am I in the mode where am I getting a little out of shape, so I got to go in early and work out? Or are we on a exhausting run where I need a little more rest and get in and get the body worked on or massaged or, I think it's amazing, and I kind of forget about it now that you've been out of the game so long. It's amazing how much your body is your vessel, right? It's your means of everything. And I kind of forgot how much you're always focused on what you're feeling and how you're feeling and where your energy level's at. So I think the morning routine is always about getting your body prepped to get going, so that you're not wasting time where you get out in the ice and go, man, I'm a little sluggish early. If it means coming in and getting an early workout, an early stretch, your body tweaked a little bit. I think every athlete is focused on how am I feeling now? When do I have to be at peak performance? If the game was tonight, I probably wouldn't be doing this in the morning because that changes your body. My mind on a game day is all about visualizing the things I need to do well, visualizing who's playing goal tonight. So what are you going to do against this particular guy, and getting your body and mind ready to play. And so I think it is all, you're very fortunate when it's your profession that you can have that day where you don't have to do other stuff because you're getting paid to do this job or that's your focus. But it every now and then I forget, having been gone so long, how much that was an every day and every moment focus of your mind is to prepare yourself for playing.
And I also think, no discredit to other sports, but I think the NHL is very cutthroat, right? So if you don't perform at your best, there are another few people.
Well, there's somebody else always pushing from behind, no question. And every night is a different opponent. Like you might have a night where I'm having a great night because my matchup against who I'm playing is not as difficult, whereas I might get 3 nights in a row where I've got the top defensive forward and a top defenseman. And so it's never the same. I often talk with Jamie about the difference of trying to perfect every stroke and every stride of a routine and do it time and time and time and time and time again. That's such a mental preparation that is discipline and focus. This is every single day is a different opponent and different speed, different size, different angle, and it's just different. And so you have to have the mental toughness to stick with that through 80 games during the year and then a long playoff run. It's a daunting task physically and mentally.
Yeah, I believe that. Leads perfectly right into the next question. How do you prepare for more important moments?
I've always been one. I was a big visualizer. So I think if you ever say that, say going into the Stanley Cup Final Game 7 that you're not nervous, baloney. You've got to be a little nervous. You've got to have that feeling in your stomach of the anxiousness and anxiety a little bit. And I think that what I found during growing up from being a young performer to then getting into junior hockey to college hockey, then to the next level NHL, is just always trying to maneuver those nervous energy into a positive. And visualization was a big thing for me. As I said before, if we're going in, I'm thinking, who am I going to have to go up against tonight? Or a goaltender has a certain way of playing, so I'm going to visualize what move to make on him at the right time. And I just think that allows you, if you're focused on your energy and your role and your responsibility and your assets that you have and the things you do well, you're not focused on the end result. It's when you're trying to focus on the winning, then everything else gets kind of lost. If I can focus on doing my job and being prepared and feeling energized and being hard on the puck, I think that's what gets you in those special moments, those big games, that you're not going to falter. You're going to be confident, you're going to be energized, and you're going to be able to play at the highest level.
Focus on the process.
Yep, yeah, you've heard that before, I bet, eh?
A few times, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you overcome setbacks?
Same type of thing. I think I've always been one that, we had a saying with the Oilers. Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier always said, the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance, and we had a sixth one in there. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Just a little dressing room added to it. But I think in those moments of setback, I'm a firm believer in accountability. And I think we've always talked about as a group, accountability, respectability, responsibility, to be doing your job and understand if there's a setback in your team or in your game, or you lose a couple in a row, or you lose in a series, you got to be able to analyze and look back and say, what responsibility is solely on my shoulders? What is bad luck? Things happen, bad timing, great performances against. And I think those are the things that can energize you when you maybe go through a bad stretch. But again, the process you're talking about, you're going, no, if I'm honest with myself, I'm prepared and I'm playing well. It's just not going well. It'll come. The hockey gods will take a time. Whereas, how do you handle bad performances? You go, if you can look at yourself and say, you know what, I wasn't prepared tonight, or I didn't put the effort in tonight. Well, that to me is where you're going to find a way to the next night be better. And it's that accountability to that, self-evaluation is an easy word to say, but some people have a hard time, taking the onus and then finding energy of saying, okay, I failed there. Now what's the steps in the process that I need to get better? And I think I felt I was pretty good at that. I will say, when you falter as an athlete, and every athlete does when you're doing 80-game season against, so many different opponents, typically you've lost that confidence. And how can you maintain that confidence when things aren't going well? That is, as the sports psychologist will say, that's the gem that the great athletes can find, right? Even when it's been a bad stretch, you can dig down and find that confidence again. So I think that self-evaluation of where you're at is so important.
Okay. I have an extra question for you.
Yeah.
I'm a kid of the 80s. And
Yep.
For some people, it's very difficult to imagine back then. The medium of information was television, newspaper.
Nothing else. Yeah.
So over here in Europe, we did follow American sports.
Yep.
But sometimes information was difficult. But we knew about Joe Montana, we knew about Magic and Jordan. One thing that definitely we followed was the Gretzky trade.
Yep.
From my research, you were on the team that he left.
Yes.
How was it for the team and the players?
It was devastating. It changed hockey. Like, you've probably heard people say so often, if Wayne Gretzky can get traded, anybody can get traded. So now it's a business. It's not, staying with a team to be honorable and show loyalty and that. So for me, I got traded to Edmonton in November of 1987. And to get an opportunity to play with Wayne and win a Stanley Cup with Wayne was just like a dream come true. And he truly is. He's the best teammate. Such an amazing combination of, incredible individual talent, but a great sense of how to bring a team together. He was so good with players of all levels. So, he had been the heartbeat of our team, which won at that point 4 out of 5 Stanley Cups, 4 cups in 5 years. So it was the hardest thing, I think, for everybody to swallow, that something like that could happen. And it took our team a long time to survive from that, because I go back to a key moment when I said before about us winning 2 years later in 1990. The next year, we ended up playing the Kings in the first round of the playoffs, and we had a 3-1 series lead. So we had won the first 3 out of the first 4 games. And, like Wayne has done so many times before, we still hadn't cut the cord with him. I think of when you're playing a great opponent, you hit him hard and you check him hard and you've got, fear of him. He was still our friend, our leader, our captain, even though he was our opponent. And lo and behold, they came back and beat us 3 straight to win 4-3. So we blew a 3-1 lead, which didn't happen much at that time. So just to give you how much damage from our mentality of, still not separating that Wayne should be an Oiler. We'd be a great team. We'd win the cup again. And when we lost that game in Los Angeles, Wayne scored an empty net goal, which ended it. And he did a celebration in the middle of the ice. At the end, Glenn Sather, our coach and GM, came in and just said, "Okay, guys, there's not much we can say here. That's a devastating loss." He goes, "I just want you to remember your friend, your buddy, your guy who you've, treated special in this series." Because he knew we didn't hit him. We didn't do the things. He goes, "He just shoved it down your throat there, and it's time to cut the cord." And I honestly do. That allowed us the next year to be prepared to be the Edmonton Oilers minus Wayne Gretzky. It was Mark Messier's team. He was the captain. He was that. Now, Mark was the captain the year before, but it just hung over us so badly. And so it was a shock, but it changed the way I think players perceive being a part of a team and showing loyalty, having a guy like that traded at the prime of his career. Would have been interesting to see how many more we would have won, but as I said, he was a pretty amazing guy.
I believe that. Who's your role model and why?
Well, since we're talking about Wayne, I think Wayne was definitely a huge influence in, maybe my life getting to the NHL as watching a guy, smaller player, come in and just dominate the league. He was head and shoulders above the level of other players. I think he was somebody that you could aspire to and say you didn't have to be the strongest, you didn't have to be the fastest, you didn't have to, look the best all around. It's just there's something inherently there that's so special. And then to get him as a teammate, I thought he helped me out so much. And, even just little morning skating around, I used to ask him about, year after year, he's setting NHL records with his points. He had 215 points, 214 points. And said each year, Wayne, what do you do to re-inspire yourself to say, okay, who's driving and pushing you? I know what was pushing me. I had a terrible rookie year. You're trying to become an established star. I think when you're at the top of your game and nobody's better, I want to get inside your head and just say, what drives you? And, he just said that I've always felt there's somebody along the way who's going to be better. And every year you got to prove that you can be the best you can be. And so it doesn't really matter, what kind of great year you had last year. Next year is the new one. You got to start fresh again. And so I thought he, from a player perspective, was a great role model. My dad and mom were so great at making sure we had every opportunity to play the game. But I think one of your questions either coming up or involved with this one is, piece of advice or saying from a player. And my dad's 3 things that he said my entire life growing up was work hard, keep smiling, have fun. And I do it with my kids now in their sports playing days. But I really, those are 3 things. It's in its simplest terms that, I remember being asked, well, your parents must really pushed you hard and drive you. And I went, well, no, as I said, your son's is responsible for his development. I was responsible to say, how badly did I want it? And I always felt that going to the rink, instead of having, make sure you do this or forecheck hard or do that, Dad would just say, son, work hard, keep smiling, have fun out there. And I thought that stuck with me. If you're doing the work every single day and you got a good positive energy with a smile on your face and you're having fun, it's never work. It's like they always say, you're never really working a day of your life if you're doing something you love. And those are three things that have just sort of kept me at an even pace when things were bad and at a grounded place when things were really good. It's just sort of been my three-word mantra throughout my career.
Yeah. And to expand on that, I really think that parents, the further they are away from the sport, they less understand.
Yeah.
I truly believe, from what I've seen working with my athletes, but also people I've spoken to,
Yep.
the ones who succeed are intrinsically driven. There's no one from the outside.
No. And you can't imagine, well, I'm sure of all the different athletes you've talked about, you can't imagine the discussions I've had with other parents when they go talk to my son. He's not doing this. And we're sending him to this camp and we're doing this. And I just try to back them off and say, trust your heart and soul of your child to tell you what they are. You know, they'll be the ones telling you whether they're really driven, or is this your drive to try to get them to be something that they're not, because that is the honest, you have to have that self-awareness as a parent too, to go, man, why am I doing this? This is not his goal or her goal. And I think you're bang on there. Absolutely.
Yeah. At the 1980 Olympic Games, the US team beat the Soviet Union in the final. And to date, it's one of the biggest upsets in Olympic history, called the Miracle on Ice. That was at the point your career started. Did it have an impact on you? Because essentially it was David beating Goliath.
Absolutely. You know, I remember it. I remember it like yesterday, actually, watching, again, like you were saying, in the 80s, social media is not there. There's not instantaneous this. You know, we had in our family, we had a black and white TV with rabbit ears that, got one station for a good chunk of my life. So watching Hockey Night in Canada, which now I broadcast, was something you did every Saturday. But watching that Olympic Games was just the best reminder that team is stronger than individual. And I think one of the things that growing up playing a team sport that just resonated with me, if you've ever been around, it doesn't matter how successful you are as an individual. You could be the best player on the worst team, and eventually that's not a whole lot of fun. But if you can be the best player that you can be on a group that has the same feeling and meaning and growth together, that's the most powerful thing in sport. And so watching that was amazing. And amazing to me that you say that is 4 years later, when I'm at that point, I would have been 17 years old. My first year at Michigan State, we got to the NCAA Final Four, and guess where they were? At Lake Placid. Oh. So I was in the NCAA finals at Lake Placid. And so for me, again, it's going 4 years after watching the U.S. beat the Russians and all the glory that went with that. Here I am on the same ice playing that. So, yeah, there's no question it has an impact and has a huge impact on what it means to be a good teammate. Again, going back to what's the most special moment. Most special moment is being a part of a team like the Edmonton Oilers in 88 and 1990 that we were all like-minded people that sacrificed for each other and you played for each other. It's the most powerful thing when you've got 23 people all loving and playing and working for each other. You can always control yourself, but it's pretty special to be in a group that is together and doing it. And that's the greatest thing about winning a Stanley Cup, is that journey to get there as a teammate. To me, it's incredible.
Yeah. Really cool. I think now we're getting to that question. What is the best advice you received?
Yes. Well, I think the best advice I would go with as a young kid, my parents just saying, you got to follow your dreams and do what makes you feel good. it does make me sad in today's world with parents pushing and, looking at the NHL as a business as opposed to a game. So just in my hockey world, and saying, my kid's got to do this, got to do more. Why can't he do that? And I think the best advice I ever got was, follow your dreams and don't think you can't do anything. Like I played with 20-year-olds when I was 14. And I went to university as a 16-year-old with guys who were 25. I was an 18-year-old in the NHL, the youngest you could be. I think those sort of feelings from my mom and dad were, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. And don't let anybody else tell you you're not ready. If you're ready, you'll know it. And I think it just broke down barriers and boundaries for me. And people would say, well, he's too young to play there. I go, well, no, like I grew up quickly, I matured quickly, and I think I never felt those shackles of, well, this is the way you've got to do it. And I think from a young age, my parents instilled that, don't be afraid to journey out on your own and be as great as you can be. And I've kind of always lived that throughout my whole life. And there's times in my professional life where you doubted it and you thought, oh man, I can't, I've lost my game or I've done that. But I just think that's sort of been the driving force inside me for sure.
Back in the days, how did a typical training day look like?
So different than today's, that's for sure. I wish we had the, I look at the speed of the game and the training that the guys have. But for me, I was not a very fast skater. I wasn't gifted with blinding speed. Again, going back to my dad, I remember I always had teammates that I'd be playing with and I'd say, oh God, that guy gets a breakaway every game. Like he's just flying speed around the outside. I wish I could do that. My dad said, yeah, but when he gets to the net, he doesn't have the calmness you have or the hands you have. Like God gives you different gifts, and your development, because you're not the fastest, has made you better at different things. So a day for me would be my focus, especially at the NHL level, was my legs. I was not fast, so it was all about power, explosiveness, and working in the gym to try to make sure that was ready. I know I had teammates that were so fast skaters, like just naturally fast, and I'd see them in the gym and they're always, pumping up their arms and doing, and I just said, I don't skate on my arms and my legs are my slowest body. So I think, again, just off season to really focus on improving power and speed and quickness. And in season, I worked on my shot. I mean, you said earlier on, the sniper, I had the best shooting percentage in regular season career and playoff career because I worked tirelessly at, framing the net and knowing where to shoot and getting positional and getting so natural at it that you had it, ingrained in your eyes. So I think from a training during the season, the greatest thing about being in the NHL, unlike minor hockey, when practice is over, the Zamboni comes on, you got to get off. NHL, that's where you do the most work, is when official practice is over. The amount of time you spend on honing your craft and shooting pucks and that it was just like heaven because you had free time and you could use it.
Oh, cool. You've rubbed shoulders not only with one of the greatest of the game, but also two more. You mentioned Mark Messier and Mario Lemieux. If you look at the commonalities and the differences, so looking at what makes a high performer, what did they have in common? Where were they different?
Common is just the incredible confidence and belief that they can accomplish anything. Like you asked before about not being afraid, or how do you handle those big moments? Wayne and Mark, Mario, when I left him, was in his fourth year in the league and had yet, to have the success that way. But it's inherent in him that to be the guy that the onus of winning and losing really does fall on is a heavy burden. And what the commonality of all those guys is an unbelievable, unrelenting belief in they can accomplish anything and they can do it. Give it to me. I three guys that you never seen more clutch performances just at the key moments. And what I loved about playing with all of them, and mostly I spent most of my time with Mark Messier, was just what that brought out of me. Because I look to that as leadership, right? And just say, now it's kind of like your father. You don't want to let your father down. Your teammate and your leader, you don't want to let him down, and he brings more out of you like that. So that ability to be not only focused on his own or their own skill set and be at the top all the time is the understanding of what they can do to bring everybody else along with it. That leadership quality is inherent in all of them. The difference is Mario, I thought, was the most mind-boggling individual skill. Like, he could just do so many things because of his size, because of his hands. That made him unique. He was probably the most skilled individually of those three. Wayne's incredible vision and inherent timing of what's going on around him. I mean, he always knew who was in the stands, where his parents were, where the guy was behind the net. And, he could juggle those things. If you had those little word boxes above his head, he's got so many juggling, but they're all in sync. I mean, he truly was an amazing, had an amazing ability to sense what was going on around on the ice and just see guys out of nowhere. Great example for him was when you're on a 2-on-1 in practice with him, where you're coming late and it doesn't look like he can even see you. For most guys, you think, oh, if they only saw me, I'd be open. And then you never get the puck. With him, you go in to think, oh, if he only saw me, and the puck comes to you. It's like he saw you and he was making the play. And Mark, just his spirit and just his anything to get it done spirit. Like, Mark was a ball of energy off the ice that wanted you to be around, or made you want to be around him. And on the ice, just the most bullet determined person. So the commonality is that fearlessness of failure and embracing anything that's coming. But they each had their own little way about them that made them special as well.
Really cool. Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
Well, you know what? We were talking earlier. I'll try to find Mike Eruzione for you then, if we can. How's that sound?
That would be really cool.
Because, I laugh because I've been at events with Mike, and everybody jokingly, he's got a big passion and big spirit. And there's a guy, again, who sees the moment, right, as the ragtag group of American college kids, and he was their leader. We see him at Mario's tournament in Pittsburgh many times, and we always called him, he was America's guest for a long time after winning that. So I'll try to make efforts so that you can connect with Mike.
That would be really cool. What's going on in Craig Simpson's life at this moment in time?
Well, right now, I'm, fortunately, a father of 5 great kids. I got going to be a grandfather actually coming up. My eldest son, Dylan, and his wife, Haley, are having a baby. So I'll be 53 being grandpa. The kids are doing great. Life is good. I'm broadcasting Hockey Night in Canada. As I said, I remember, you ask any young player of my age, especially growing up in London, Ontario, you only saw the Toronto Maple Leafs on a Saturday night, and Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday was our one time you got to watch hockey. So to be here, at this age, being the voice of Hockey Night in Canada is a pretty big honor and a special time. So I feel very fortunate to still be around the game that I do love being around, and I get an opportunity every week to bring it into millions of homes in Canada. It's a lot of fun.
I believe that. That's really cool. Where can people find you?
I'm not a huge social media guy, but my Twitter is HNIC, which is Hockey Night in Canada, HNIC Simmer, SIMMER. And I'm not a huge tweeter. I, as you were saying, growing up in the era I did, I wasn't big into that, but I know in social media times I'm going to have to become more. My wife's getting me into it a little bit better, but that's about all I do now.
It's hard to remember that we had phones. You could only
gosh,
right?
Exactly. I was in Los Angeles when Wayne Gretzky got traded. When you were saying that, I was down there visiting him, and when he went up to Edmonton, I'll tell you this: 1988, Janet Gretzky and I were on a cell phone with Walter and Phyllis Gretzky, Wayne's parents, holding the phone to their TV because it wasn't even on TV in LA, the press conference. I go, you look at 1988 and how much has changed from then. It's an incredible, I'm not sure I'd want to be an athlete in today's environment with all the social media around, for sure.
It has certainly different challenges, yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Craig, thanks a lot for your time. That was
all right. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.